Have you ever watched someone get humiliated in front of 100 strangers, and not one person said a word? Picture this. A woman sits quietly in a first-class seat she paid for, minding her own business, when a stranger looks her up and down and decides she doesn't belong there. That's exactly what happened on Meridian Air Flight 217, bound from Chicago to London. And the woman being humiliated wasn't just a passenger. She was about to remind an entire airline exactly who built it. The first-class cabin of Flight 217 smelled like cedar and fresh coffee, the kind of scent you only get when a company spends real money on the details nobody's supposed to notice. Denise Carter noticed all of it because 3 years ago, she'd personally approved that scent for every Meridian aircraft in the fleet. But today, Denise wasn't the CEO of Meridian Air, the first black woman to run a major U.S. carrier. Today, she was just a woman in seat 2A, wearing a gray zip-up hoodie, worn sneakers, and reading glasses that hid eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Her hair was tucked under a soft beanie, and she was scrolling through what looked like a paperback novel on her tablet. It was actually next quarter's route profitability report. This was her ritual, twice a year. No warning to anyone, no red carpet, no nervous station managers trailing her down the jet bridge. Just her, flying as a stranger, feeling what her passengers actually felt. "Something to drink before we push back, ma'am." Denise looked up. A young flight attendant with a name tag that read Rianne held a bottle of Prosecco, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His gaze flicked once over her hoodie, once over her sneakers. The quiet, practiced once-over of someone checking whether she really belonged in a $9,000 seat. "Just water, please, Ryan." "No ice." He blinked, thrown that she'd used his name without glancing at his badge, then nodded and turned, right as a commotion erupted at the cabin door. "Absolutely not. Do you have any idea who my husband is?" The voice sliced through the cabin like a blade through silk. A woman swept in wearing a cream Fendi suit, dripping in gold jewelry, trailed by a harried assistant buried under garment bags. This was Vivian Ashcroft. Old Connecticut money, a legendary temper, and a lifelong belief that the world existed to accommodate her. "Mrs. Ashcroft, welcome back to Meridian." Ryan's whole posture shifted, obsequious in an instant. Vivian didn't look at him. She stalked down the aisle, yanked her sunglasses down her nose, and stopped cold at seat 2A. "There's been a mistake." She jabbed a manicured finger at Denise. "That's my seat." Ryan fumbled with his tablet. "Apologies, Mrs. Ashcroft. You're actually in 3D today. A lovely window seat with the same." "I don't want 3D. I always sit in 2A. The lighting is better on this side, and I need the extra leg room for my Birkin." She leaned in, lowering her voice to a stage, whisper loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. "Look at her, Ryan. Clearly there's been some kind of upgrade glitch. That seat is for our real VIPs. My husband golfs with your chief operating officer, Walter Pruitt. Should I just call Walter right now?" Denise's fingers paused on the tablet screen. Walter Pruitt. She knew Walter well. She'd personally signed off on the internal audit that had his name flagged for a financial discrepancy nobody else at Meridian knew about yet. Vivian dropping his name like a trump card was almost funny. Ryan's face went pale. A call to corporate, terrified ground staff more than a mechanical failure ever could. "Please, Mrs. Ashcroft, let me see what I can arrange." He turned toward Denise, kneeling to be at eye level, voice syrupy with forced politeness. "Ma'am, we have a small seating situation. Would you be willing to move to row 6? Still business class, just a little further back." Denise glanced toward row 6, right by the galley. Constant noise, no privacy, and critically, not the seat she'd paid full fare for. "I chose this seat specifically, Ryan. I paid for it, I understand, but Mrs. Ashcroft is one of our most loyal flyers. We try to accommodate." "I'm a loyal flyer, too," Denise said, voice calm and even, "and I'm already seated." That was the wrong answer, apparently, because Vivian shoved past Ryan and loomed directly over Denise, closing the space between them until Denise could smell her perfume. "Listen here." Vivian's voice dropped, venomous and quiet, meant only for Denise, except it carried anyway. "I don't know what employee discount or contest got you this seat, but let's be honest with each other. You don't fit the demographic for row 2. Why don't you take whatever voucher this nice young man offers you and go sit where you're more comfortable? I hear Economy Plus has decent legroom now." The cabin went dead silent. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was ugly, and it was loud, and everyone heard it. A businessman 2 rows up, buried his face deeper in his newspaper, pretending very hard to be somewhere else. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Denise looked Vivian dead in the eye, and there was nothing in her voice but steel. "I'm very comfortable right here, Mrs. Ashcroft. I'd suggest you find your actual seat before the doors close." Vivian's mouth fell open like she'd been slapped. She spun on her heel toward Ryan, her face flushing a deep, furious red. "Get the purser. Now. I want this woman removed from this aircraft." The air in the cabin felt thin, like the oxygen itself had fled. Ryan scrambled toward the front, leaving Denise and Vivian locked in a silent standoff. Vivian's heel tapping an impatient rhythm against the carpet, her glare pure venom. Denise returned to her tablet, jaw tight, heart hammering, not with fear, with rage, carefully banked. Moments later, the curtain snapped back, and a woman stepped through with the bearing of someone who'd run this cabin for decades. Karen Voss, lead purser, late 50s, silver bob pinned into a helmet of authority. Denise recognized the name instantly from personnel files, 3 commendations for safety record, and 6 separate complaints in the last 18 months alone about how she treated junior crew and difficult passengers. Ryan whispered frantically in Karen's ear, gesturing between the 2 women. Karen's eyes narrowed, sized up the situation in half a second, and made her decision before she'd even said a word. She turned to Vivian first, voice smooth as syrup. "Mrs. Ashcroft, I am so sorry for the disturbance. Let's get this sorted immediately." "It's not a disturbance, Karen. It's an insult." Vivian's voice cracked with theatrical outrage. 15 years I've flown this airline. Never once denied my preferred seat. And now I'm told no, by her. She flung a hand toward Denise like she was pointing at trash on the sidewalk. "Either she moves, or I want her removed for being disruptive." "Disruptive?" Denise's voice was ice. "I haven't raised my voice once. The only person disrupting this cabin is standing in the aisle, screaming." Karen turned to Denise, and whatever professional mask she'd worn a second ago evaporated completely. She wasn't looking at a paying customer anymore. She was looking at a problem. A young black woman in a hoodie, making a scene in front of a big spending client. "Ma'am," Karen said, dropping all pretense of warmth. "The captain is prepping for departure. We cannot have arguments in first class. Mrs. Ashcroft is a Platinum Legacy member. We need to accommodate a seat swap for the comfort of all our guests. And my comfort doesn't matter." Denise's voice stayed level, but something dangerous moved underneath it now. "I paid for this seat. My money spends exactly the same as hers." "Let's not make this about money," Karen sighed, exasperated, like Denise was the unreasonable one. "It's about protocol. We reserve the right to reassign seating for operational needs." Operational needs. Denise let out a short, humorless laugh. "Satisfying somebody's tantrum isn't an operational need, Karen. It's a failure of leadership. And you should know. That's a direct violation of Meridian's own equity and service policy." Section 4, Paragraph 2. Karen blinked, visibly startled that a woman in leggings and sneakers was quoting internal policy back at her word for word. Vivian cackled. "Oh, look at her. Did you memorize that off your cracked little screen, sweetheart? Karen, get the captain. I don't feel safe. She's being aggressive." "I agree completely," Karen said, snapping into a decision. "Ma'am, gather your things. We're moving you to coach." "Coach?" Denise repeated slowly. A minute ago it was row 6. Row 6 just filled, Karen lied, smooth as glass. We have one seat left in the back of the aircraft. If you refuse to comply, we will have airport security remove you for failing to follow crew instruction. Denise studied Karen's face for a long, silent moment. This was the exact moment where the whole rotten system cracked open, where a purser was willing to strip a paying passenger of her seat, downgrade her 5 cabins, and threaten her with arrest, all to keep a woman in a Fendi suit from having a bad afternoon. Denise stood. She was tall, and even in sneakers, she carried herself with a stillness that made Karen instinctively step back. "Fine," Denise said. "I'll move." Vivian's smile was pure, toxic triumph. "Finally. Smart girl, know your place." Denise reached into the overhead bin, pulled down a worn leather duffel, and looked nothing like a woman who'd just lost. She looked like a predator who'd decided to let her prey enjoy one more meal before the trap closed. "I'll move to the back," she said, loud enough for the entire hushed cabin to hear. "But I want everyone here to remember this moment. I gave you every chance to do the right thing." "Oh, stop with the speeches," Vivian snapped, waving a dismissive hand. "Just go." Denise walked the length of the plane. Business class heads turned. Premium economy passengers glanced up from their phones. She reached the cramped, stale air of the back of the aircraft and found her assigned seat. 41B, wedged between a burly man, wrestling with a leaking sandwich, and a young mother bouncing a crying toddler on her knee. She sat. She didn't complain. She pulled out her phone, not to check email. She was texting Meridian's head of global security. "Code Black. Flight 217. I'm on board. Full lockdown protocol. Gate hold immediately." Back up front, Vivian sank into seat 2A with a satisfied sigh, sipping the Prosecco Ryan poured her. "Much better," she murmured, kicking off her heels. "Some people just need reminding of the hierarchy." "Absolutely, Mrs. Ashcroft," Karen said with a bright, hollow smile. "We're only here to keep you comfortable." The engines roared to life, the whole fuselage humming with the promise of takeoff. And then they didn't move. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, and it didn't have its usual calm authority. It sounded confused. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We've just received a hold order from Meridian Corporate. We are grounded at the gate until further notice. Please remain seated." Vivian frowned, checking her diamond watch. Grounded? For what? In seat 41B, Denise Carter allowed herself a small, private smile. The game had only just begun. The silence that followed the captain's announcement was the kind that comes right before a storm breaks. The engine spooled down to a low, dying whine before cutting out entirely, and the sudden absence of that vibration made the whole cabin feel wrong, exposed, waiting. "This is completely unacceptable." Vivian slammed her empty flute onto the tray table. "Karen, what in God's name is going on? I have a dinner reservation at a Michelin restaurant in London. If we miss our slot, I am holding this airline personally responsible." Karen was already on the intercom phone pressed to her ear, her knuckles white around the receiver. "Yes, Captain? But did they give any reason? Security threat? Mechanical failure?" A pause. Her face drained of color. An executive override. "I've worked this airline for 22 years, and I've never once heard that phrase." An executive override didn't come from air traffic control. It came from the boardroom. Karen hung up slowly, forced her professional mask back into place, and stepped through the curtain. "Mrs. Ashcroft, my apologies. Just a mandatory administrative hold, paperwork issue. It should resolve momentarily." "Administrative hold," Vivian scoffed, loud enough to carry into business class. "Sounds like plain incompetence to me. You people can't even manage a seating chart properly." I suppose flying the actual plane is asking too much. 300 feet back, the world was entirely different. Seat 41B had none of the cedar and coffee luxury of the front cabin. The air here was thick and stale. Beside her, the young mother, Renee, according to the tag on her diaper bag, bounced her wailing toddler and mouthed a helpless apology to Denise, clearly terrified this stern-looking stranger in a hoodie was about to snap at her. His ears, Renee whispered, eyes brimming. I ran out of formula at the gate. I've been trying to flag someone down for 20 minutes. Nobody had come, Denise realized, because the crew up front was too busy pouring Prosecco for a woman throwing a tantrum over a seat. Excuse me, Denise said to the man beside her, unbuckling. I need to get up for a second. Seatbelt signs on, miss, he said around a mouthful of sandwich. It's fine. Just the galley. She walked back to where two junior attendants were scrolling their phones, ignoring the flashing call lights above their heads. Ma'am. You need to sit down, one of them said without even looking up. I need a carton of milk, warmed, and a bottle of water for the gentleman in 41A, Denise said, her voice quiet but carrying an authority that made the attendant's thumb freeze mid-scroll. We're not doing service. We're grounded. Denise leaned in and read the name tag. Priya, there's a mother back there who's been struggling for 20 minutes while you're on your phone. You can get me that milk, or you can explain to your supervisor exactly why you ignored a direct request for passenger assistance during a delay. Something about the woman's posture made Priya's stomach twist with an instinct she couldn't name. She grabbed the milk. Denise carried it back, mixed it into a sippy cup, and within a minute the screaming had dissolved into contented, greedy gulps. Renee's eyes filled with tears of relief. Thank you. You're an angel. I don't know why they sent you back here, but you're the kindest person I've met all day. Just a passenger like you, Denise said softly. Then she pulled out her phone again, full signal bars glowing. To Victor Hale, head of Global. From Victor Hall, breaching the jet bridge now. Ground crew has secured the stairs. Local PD on standby at the tarmac. General Counsel is with me. To Vict Tehelgood, full extraction. And Victor, bring every termination file. Denise locked her phone, set it face down, and closed her eyes, listening to Vivian's voice rising through the curtain up front, complaining now about the cabin temperature. Denise breathed in the smell of stale coffee and human exhaustion. This was the real Meridian experience. And she was about to burn the rod out from the head down. The plane jolted, not the engines this time, but the unmistakable sound of the main cabin door being wrenched open from outside. A door that was never supposed to open once a flight was sealed. Karen's voice crackled over the intercom, thin and unsteady. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we have some additional personnel boarding the aircraft. Please remain seated. Denise opened her eyes. It was time. First class saw them first. 4 men in immaculate dark suits stepped through the cabin door. Not mechanics, not gate agents. Leading them was Victor Hale, a name whispered in fear throughout the company, but a face few junior employees had ever actually seen. Behind him, General Counsel clutched a thick black folder, flanked by 2 stone-faced security officers. Karen's blood ran cold. She smoothed her hair, forced a bright smile, and stepped forward to intercept them. Gentlemen, I wasn't briefed on any VIP boarding. If you're here for Mrs. Ashcroft in 2A, Victor didn't look at her. He walked around her like she was a piece of furniture blocking the aisle. Clear the way, he said quietly to Ryan, who nearly leapt into an empty seat to get out of his path. Vivian, seeing the suits, sat up straighter, a smug smile blooming across her face. Finally, Gerald sent his people. About time. This crew has been an absolute disgrace. She extended a manicured hand toward Victor. I'm Vivian Ashcroft. I assume you're here to apologize and escort me somewhere with better service while they sort out this delay. Victor stopped. He looked down at her outstretched hand with an expression carved from stone. Didn't take it, didn't speak, and after 1 full second of dead silence, turned his head and kept walking. Vivian's hand hung in the air. Excuse me, hello? I am talking to you. He didn't stop. The procession moved past the first-class curtain, past the lie-flat business-class seats, where wealthy travelers peered over their privacy dividers in confusion, past premium economy, until they reached the curtain separating the front of the plane from the back. Karen scrambled after them, practically running. "Sir, please. That's economy back there. There's nothing but the restaurateurs and coach seating." Victor ripped the curtain aside, and the entire back cabin went silent, dozens of heads turning to watch four powerful men march down the narrow aisle like sharks swimming into a goldfish bowl. He stopped at row 41. He looked at the woman in the hoodie, wedged between a construction worker and a mother with a sleeping baby. And then he bowed. Not a nod, a full, formal bow from the waist. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice clear and carrying through a cabin that had stopped breathing. "My apologies for the delay in extraction. Perimeter is secure." Denise unbuckled her seatbelt. The click echoed through the dead silence. "Thank you, Victor." Her voice was calm, but there was a resonance in it now, a weight of power she'd been quietly hiding for the entire flight. She turned to the mother beside her. "The flight will be canceled, I'm afraid. But don't worry about the ticket. My assistant will have a hotel and private car waiting for you at the gate. This one's on the house." Renee stared at her. Who are you?" Denise smiled and stood, and the general counsel handed her a tablet without a word. She didn't even look at it. She looked at the aisle, where Karen Voss stood frozen, the color draining from her face as recognition finally landed. Carter. Denise Carter, the CEO, the owner, the woman who signed every paycheck on this aircraft. "Karen," Denise said, stepping into the aisle, forcing the older woman to back away. "You threatened to have me arrested for refusing to give up a seat I paid for. Security is here." She paused. "But not for me." She began walking forward, the reverse of the walk she'd taken to the back an hour earlier. This time it was a coronation, passengers whispered as she passed. "Wait, is that the CEO? That's Denise Carter. I've seen her on the cover of Forbes. They put the CEO in a middle seat?" She reached first class. Vivian stood in the aisle, hands on her hips, confusion curdling into fury as she realized the security detail hadn't come for her at all. "What is this?" Vivian demanded. "Why are these men following the seat thief?" Denise stopped 3 feet away and slowly removed her glasses, folding them and handing them to Victor without looking. "Mrs. Ashcroft, you asked earlier if I knew who your husband was." "Yes, and you're about to find out exactly what that means." "I know precisely who he is," Denise said. "Gerald Ashcroft, senior partner at Ashcroft & Weiss, a firm Meridian pays roughly $9 million a year in retainer." She turned to her general counsel. "Patricia, are we still under contract with Ashcroft & Weiss?" "Renewals next month, Ms. Carter. Cancel it, effective today. Cite conflict of interest due to a senior partner's family conduct." "Done," Patricia said, already tapping her tablet. Vivian's face collapsed. You can't. You don't own." "I do," Denise said quietly, closing the last of the distance between them. "This is my airline, Mrs. Ashcroft, and you are currently trespassing on my property." Vivian stumbled backward into the armrest of seat 2A. You own Meridian?" "I do, and I have zero tolerance for racism, harassment, and entitlement. You managed to hit all 3 in under 10 minutes. Denise turned to Ryan and Karen, huddled by the galley, wishing the floor would swallow them. "You two, we're going to have a very serious conversation about what customer service actually means." "Miss Carter, please," Karen sobbed, mascara running. "I didn't know it was you." "If I'd known that," Denise cut in, pointing directly at her chest, "is exactly the problem. You treated me like garbage because you assumed I was nobody. If you only treat people with dignity when you think they have power over you, you have no dignity at all." She turned to Victor. "Escort Mrs. Ashcroft off my aircraft. Permanent no-fly list. Global ban. Meridian and every partner carrier. She can take a boat to London." "With pleasure, Miss Carter." "And the crew?" Denise looked at Ryan and Karen for a long, silent moment. strip their badges. Full tribunal, boardroom, 1 hour. As Victor's men closed in on Vivian, now hyperventilating, clawing at her own collar, Denise turned to address the stunned first-class cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. This flight is canceled. A replacement aircraft is being prepped at Gate 14. Everyone aboard today receives a full refund and a voucher for a future round-trip flight. Anywhere in our network." She glanced down at Vivian, being hauled toward the door, screaming something incoherent about lawyers. Except her. Denise picked up her duffel bag from where she'd dropped it earlier and looked once more at seat 2A, the seat she'd paid for, the seat she'd been dragged out of. "Nice seat," she murmured to herself, "but I think I'll stand for a while." She walked off the plane, head high, leaving the wreckage of her own quiet detonation behind her. But the reckoning wasn't finished, not even close. The walk from the jet bridge to Meridian's executive suite was, for Denise Carter, a walk back into her own kingdom. Gate agents froze mid-keystroke. Baggage handlers stopped and stared. Word moves faster than fiber optic cable in an airport. The owner is in the building. For Karen and Ryan, it was a funeral march. Stripped of their lanyards and badges at the gate, escorted 10 paces behind Denise by silent security, heads down, avoiding every colleague's eyes. Karen, who had spent 22 years enforcing uniform infractions on junior staff with an iron fist, now walked with her blazer unbuttoned, mascara smeared into something ghoulish, looking every bit the fraud she'd just been exposed as. They weren't taken to standard HR. They were led to the top floor to sailing glass overlooking the entire tarmac, fuel trucks and baggage carts and silver jets taxiing in perfect rows, a view built entirely on power. Denise walked to the window and looked down at the plane she'd just abandoned. "Sit," Victor said flatly. And Karen and Ryan folded into 2 leather chairs at the far end of the mahogany table, looking impossibly small in that enormous room. Denise unzipped her hoodie, revealing a plain black shirt underneath, and poured herself water from a crystal carafe with hands that were finally, blessedly steady. "Do either of you know why I bought this airline?" Silence. "No, Miss Carter," Ryan said, barely audible. "My father was a baggage handler at O'Hare for 31 years. Denise paced the length of the table slowly. People walked past him every single day and looked straight through him like he was furniture. When I bought this company, I made one promise to myself, that dignity would be the actual currency of Meridian Air. Not dollars, dignity." She stopped directly in front of Ryan. "You saw the manifest. You saw my name. You knew that seat was paid for. Why did you lie about a seating conflict?" Ryan stared at his hands. "She said she'd call Mr. Pruitt. I panicked. I thought I'd lose my job. So to save your job, you sold your integrity to a woman with a designer handbag." Denise turned to Karen. "And you?" Karen tried to summon what was left of her authority. "Miss Carter, with respect, I was managing a volatile situation. I made a judgment call to prioritize a high-value platinum flyer over an unknown passenger. That's standard practice, protecting our highest-yield relationships." Denise let the silence stretch for 10 long seconds. Then she laughed, a short, humorless sound. "High-yield relationships. Karen, pull up her file." The lights dimmed. A massive screen flickered on, displaying Karen's 22-year personnel history. "You've filed 41 formal complaints against passengers over your tenure," Denise read aloud. 36 of them against people of color. "Did you really think that data wasn't being tracked?" Karen's face drained white. That's circumstantial. I enforce the rules." "You enforce your rules," Denise corrected. "You looked at a black woman in a hoodie and decided on sight that she was aggressive and didn't belong. You weaponized threats of arrest against a paying customer to protect a bully's ego. That isn't conflict resolution, Karen. That's a cancer, and I've been paying you a salary to spread it through my company for over 2 decades." She turned to Patricia. Severance for a purser with this tenure, under standard termination. Roughly 200,000, plus full pension, Patricia recited. Karen exhaled, some of the color returning. Fired, yes, but with her money intact. That applies to termination without cause, Patricia continued, closing the folder with a soft final click. In cases of gross misconduct, discriminatory conduct in violation of federal aviation law, and falsification of an incident report, severance is 0. Pension frozen pending legal review. Karen shot to her feet. You can't do that. I gave this company my life. You gave this company liability, Denise said coldly. You're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal effects. 20 minutes. Karen looked to Ryan for support. Ryan looked away. Ryan, you're young. You followed the wrong orders, but you followed them. 6 months unpaid suspension. Mandatory retraining on bias and professional ethics. If you pass, you start over. Economy reserves. Probationary. Thank you, Ryan whispered, nearly crumpling with relief. Thank you, Miss Carter. I won't waste it. Get them out of my sight, Denise said quietly. The doors closed behind them. Denise rubbed her temples. The crew was the symptom. The disease was a culture that let people like Vivian Ashcroft believe they owned the sky. Patricia. Where's Mrs. Ashcroft now? Airport police holding area. She's demanding her one phone call. Denise allowed herself a small, grim smile. Let her make it. I want to see what happens when the Queen realizes the whole hive has already turned on her. The holding cell at the airport precinct had none of the cedar and coffee luxury Vivian was used to. Cinder block walls, painted a flat, hopeless beige. A metal bench bolted to the floor. One fluorescent tube buzzing overhead like a trapped insect. Vivian sat with her ruined Fendi suit and her running mascara, and she wasn't crying from shame. She was crying from rage. This is a lawsuit, she muttered to the empty room, leg bouncing. I will own this airport. I will have her scrubbing floors within the week. The door buzzed open. A tired officer handed her a phone in an evidence bag. One call. Make it count. She dialed Gerald. It rang and rang. On the last ring before voicemail, it connected. Vivian. His voice was strange. Tight, clipped. Wrong. Gerald. Thank God. Relief flooded through her. You need to help me. I'm at the airport police station. Some woman claims she owns the airline. Had me dragged off in handcuffs. They canceled the entire flight. Call Walter Pruitt. Get me out of here and sue every one of them into the ground. A long, heavy silence stretched on the other end of the line. You absolute idiot, Gerald finally said. Vivian nearly dropped the phone. Excuse me? I said you're an idiot, Vivian. His voice cracked with something close to hysteria. Do you have any idea what you've done? I just got off the phone with Meridian's general counsel. Do you know who that woman was? Some seat thief who... That was Denise Carter. She doesn't just run Meridian, Vivian. She owns the holding company that keeps this entire firm alive. So what? I'm your wife. She disrespected me. She canceled our contract, Gerald said, his voice climbing toward a shout. $9 million a year, gone in 5 minutes. Because you couldn't sit in row 3. Because you had to humiliate the one woman on the planet who signs our checks. I can fix this, Vivian stammered, her arrogance finally cracking into something like fear. I'll apologize. I'll write a letter. It's too late for letters, Gerald snapped. Have you even looked at the internet? No, of course you haven't. You're in a cell. Someone filmed the whole thing, Vivian. It's everywhere. 4 million views in under 2 hours. You told her to know her place. You called her a demographic. It's on every feed in the country. Vivian's hand began to shake. Gerald, please, I'm scared. Come get me. The partners are in an emergency meeting right now, deciding whether I still have a job because of you. If I show up at that station, cameras will catch us together. I'm not coming, Vivian. You're my husband. You're an anchor around my neck, Gerald said, and there was nothing left in his voice but exhaustion. Get your own lawyer. Use your own money, assuming there's any left after our prenup gets reviewed. Prenup? Vivian's voice broke entirely. Gerald, don't do this to me. You did this, he said. Don't call this number again. The line went dead. Vivian stared at the black screen, her own terrified reflection staring back. No husband, no status, no money she could reliably call her own anymore. Just a cinder block room, a buzzing light, and the slow, sick understanding of exactly what she'd thrown away over a window seat. Back in the executive suite, Denise watched the same video Gerald had mentioned, filmed from row 2. Vivian looming over her, sneering, finger jabbing the air, and Denise's own quiet, steady dignity in response. The hashtag was already trending nationally. Meridian's official account had posted a simple statement. We fly everyone. We respect everyone. Those who can't share those values will need to find another way to travel. Miss Carter. Victor appeared in the doorway. More press? No, ma'am. He almost smiled. Situation at gate 14. The passengers from Flight 217. They're refusing to board the replacement aircraft. Denise frowned. Mechanical issue? No. They said they're not leaving until they know you're all right. I think they want to say thank you. Denise stood, fixed her hair in the reflection of the glass, and pulled her sunglasses back on. Well, she said, a real smile finally breaking through. It would be rude to keep them waiting. The walk to gate 14 felt longer than the walk down the aisle had. She braced herself for 150, exhausted, delayed travelers demanding compensation. The ugly, tired edge of stranded passengers who just wanted to go home. Instead, as she rounded the corner flanked by security, the low buzz of conversation died the instant she came into view. She stopped, tightening her grip on the duffel bag strap. Ready for the complaints, Victor, she murmured. Then Hank, the construction worker who'd shared a cramped row with her, stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans. Hey, he shouted, his voice booming across the gate. It's her. It's the boss. Slowly. Then all at once, the applause began. Not polite. Raucous. Genuine. The sound of a crowd that had just watched a bully get taken apart in real time. Renee stood, cradling her sleeping son, tears in her eyes. The businessman from row 1, who'd buried himself in his newspaper while Vivian ranted, gave Denise a small, shamed bow of his head. Denise felt her throat tighten. She'd spent years staring at spreadsheets and fuel costs and load factors, and somewhere in there, she'd almost forgotten the actual heart of the business was people. She walked to the podium. The gate agent, hands trembling, passed her the microphone. Thank you, Denise said, her voice carrying across the terminal until the applause faded. I want to apologize again for the delay and for what you had to witness earlier. Meridian promises to get you where you're going safely. Today, we failed to get you there with dignity. That stops right now. You showed her! Someone yelled from the back, and a ripple of laughter broke the tension. Denise smiled. She showed herself. She turned to the gate agent. Is the replacement aircraft ready? Yes, Miss Carter. Good. But before we board, I'm making one change to the manifest. She looked at Renee. Come up here, please. Renee approached, confused, still clutching her son. You sat in the back of that plane for 2 hours, comforting your baby, never once complaining. That's exactly the kind of grace I want in my front cabin. Denise handed her a freshly printed boarding pass. Seat 2A is open. It's yours. Renee's mouth fell open. Isn't that your seat? Not today, Denise said gently. Today it belongs to someone who's earned the rest. The gate erupted. Denise wasn't finished. As for the rest of you, every single passenger from Flight 279 will be receiving lifetime gold status with effective this afternoon. You stood by a stranger in a hoodie today, and you treated her like a human being when the people paid to do exactly that didn't. That kind of loyalty is worth more to me than any ticket price. The terminal exploded into cheering. Hank looked like a man who'd just won the lottery. Denise waited until the entire gate had boarded before walking down the jet bridge last. When she stepped onto the new aircraft, the air felt different. The new crew, briefed on exactly who was aboard, greeted her with warmth instead of the practiced fear she'd grown used to seeing on employee faces. She passed first class and saw Renee reclined in seat 2A, sparkling water in hand, her son asleep in the bassinet beside her. Renee looked up and mouthed, "Thank you." Denise kept walking, past business, past premium economy, all the way to the back. Seat 41B sat empty. Hank, in 41A, grinned up at her. "You sitting here again, boss?" "Best seat in the house," Denise said, stowing her bag. "Keeps me honest." As the plane taxied toward the runway, leaving behind the wreckage of a canceled flight, a ruined marriage, and a woman in a holding cell, learning exactly what her money was actually worth, Denise looked out the window and watched the clouds roll by. It was the first time in years flying had felt like something other than a job. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at Meridian's corporate headquarters, addressed personally to Denise Carter. No lawyer's letterhead, no demands. Just Vivian's handwriting, unsteady in places, admitting, for what may have been the first time in her life, that she had looked at another human being and decided, based on nothing but a hoodie and the color of her skin, that she didn't deserve to be treated like a person. She wrote that she didn't expect forgiveness and wasn't asking for the ban to be lifted. She only wanted Denise to know that she finally understood what she'd actually lost that day. And it wasn't a seat. Denise read it twice, then set it down on her desk, next to a framed photograph of her father in his old baggage handler's uniform, smiling in front of a plane he never once got to fly in first class. Status was never about where you sit. It's about how you stand when nobody thinks you're worth watching. And that, in the end, is exactly how the mighty fall, not with a scream, but with a quiet woman in a middle seat, waiting patiently for the right moment to stand up. If this story hit you the way it hit me, remember the real lesson underneath it. Treat the person next to you with the same respect you'd give someone important, because you genuinely never know who you're sitting beside. What would you have done in Denise's position? Fire the crew on the spot, or give them a second chance? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one.